Alright, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to take a different approach to making a YouTube video. Normally, we've got fun, fancy edits and jokes all throughout, but today we're just going to have a serious conversation about Valheim Build Heights. Over the last year, I have scoured the internet for correct information on this topic and also not outdated information on this topic, and it's really hard to find. So I thought I'd make my own video on kind of the ultimate comprehensive guide on Valheim Build Heights. Now, with that being said, there is a lot of information in this video, so you might want to take some notes. I know that sounds really weird, or just bookmark the video so that you can watch it again later if you need it. But let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, you typically have 5 different things to choose from which you're going to support your build with in Valheim. We have iron, stone, core wood, wood, and dark wood. Now wood and core wood are the first 2 types of wood which you get in any Valheim save. Regular wood is going to get you up to 16 meters tall, and you can see core wood is a little bit taller at 24 meters tall. Now before we move on, you should know that you will be able to get tar later on in the game from the plains biome, and that's going to allow you to make dark wood, and that's going to be the same height as regular wood. Now a lot of people think that 24 meters, your core wood example here, is as high as you can build in Valheim in the beginning of a world. And for the most part, that would be a correct assumption, but there is technically a way kind of soon after you start a world that you can build even taller. So the first way you can build taller is going to be once you get to stone. Let me explain. You're going to need a few pieces of iron to make that stone cutter right over there. Once you can make the stone cutter, you can place it down, and that's going to allow you to start building with stone. Now stone alone caps out at 16 meters tall, which is the same as regular wood and is shorter than core wood. But what you can do now is you can actually combine stone and wood. So kind of at the beginning of the game, you did need a few pieces of iron, but kind of at the beginning of the game, you're already up a pretty good amount taller than just plain core wood. So let's talk about exactly how much taller in just a moment, but first I'd like to explain a few mechanics when it comes to working with stone. So stone is going to max out at 16 meters for all 3 of these examples here. These are the main pieces of stone which you'll be building with. This example right here I have lowered by 1 meter just to explain a mechanic with the wood. So this can also go 1 meter higher to 16 meters. Now, stone in Valheim is really cool. Just like the ground, if you didn't already know, the ground acts as kind of your foundation in Valheim. You can see all of these pieces here are blue, and that's because they are touching the ground. Blue is your first color, of course. You probably already know this, going to green, then to yellow, orange, and red. Now, what stone is going to do for you is stone is going to essentially raise the ground up and act like this is the ground right here. So you can see at this height, wood is completely red, but if I come over here, wood is all the way to green and also blue at the same height, and that's because stone is acting as the ground. Now, an important thing to say before we move on to tell you the actual heights is the last little stone mechanic, which is a tricky one, and I've never actually seen it explained online. You can see right here we have wood which is green, and right here there is wood which is blue. Now what's happening here is that stone is maxed out at 16 meters in this example, which means it no longer has enough to give to make this a blue foundation piece. But if you take your stone and you build one below 16 or anything lower, it's actually going to make wood into a blue piece. So when you do the math, you're losing 1 meter from stone, gaining 1 meter from wood. So you're not actually building any taller from this. It's just important to know because sometimes you might get confused in building when you're noticing this happen. So yeah, that is the explanation for this. But let's talk about build heights, stone combined with wood. Stone itself, we know, caps out at 16 meters. And then we have our 3 base wood examples here on these signs. So wood itself is going to add 16 meters on top of this stone, totaling 32 meters. So regular wood actually doubles in height at the beginning of the game once you have enough iron to make a stone cutter. Dark wood only adds 14 meters, so we don't retain the full 16 meters here, but we still get to a new total of 30 meters tall. And once again, core wood is going to be your tallest option, but you can see that core wood only got 17 meters tall on top of the stone instead of, remember, core wood was the tallest at 24. So you lose a little bit when you're putting it on top of the stone, but you gain a lot because of the total of the stone and the wood together. So at the beginning of the game, you start and you're right around 20 meters. You then push it up to around 30 meters tall, and then it gets fun when you get to iron because you go all the way to 50 meters tall. At this height, I mean, that's pretty much good for most things, but we will talk about how to get a little bit taller and actually infinitely tall using a little console command kind of cheat code. Now, the basics of iron are similar to the basics of stone. So remember, stone reset our wood to green and also to even blue in certain circumstances. Iron is going to do a very similar thing. When wood is touching iron, or when many things are touching iron in Valheim, they're going to be reset no matter how tall you're building with them to blue or green. Now, I want to quickly add here that iron cage pieces and iron gates also act like iron poles. So you can connect an iron gate or an iron cage piece to a structure and use it for structural support. It will turn things green or blue just like an iron pole does or like stone does, but there is something else we need to talk about. Now, I want to debunk a common misconception or myth that people think is still true in Valheim. A little while back, I believe it was at some point true that iron gates and iron cage walls actually allowed you to build taller than iron poles, but that is no longer true, and I want to explain why it actually doesn't make sense to use these anymore. First of all, you can see just the flat out numbers here. They don't get you any taller. You got 48 meters, 50 meters, and 50 meters. So at best, they get you to the same height as iron poles. But the reason why you don't want to use them is because if you look at their recipes, cage walls take 2 iron, whereas a wood iron pole, which goes up the same height, takes 1 iron. So here you are actually using twice the amount of iron as right here. And iron gates use even more. Not only that, but these are quite large, so they might be a little bit tricky to hide or conceal in a build. So really the only reason you would want to build with these is if you found a way to make these look really cool from sticking out a build, and also you have an abundance of iron that you don't mind wasting using these. Honestly, also, I love the look of iron poles and iron beams, so that's another reason to use these. They're very sleek, you can hide them in corners pretty easily, and you can hide them absolutely completely if you really want to within a stone pole or within any stone. And you can see here that the stone is going to give me snapping points on the corners, and also it will still snap to that iron pole on the inside, so you don't have to worry about not being able to place your iron pole. And yeah, you can completely conceal it. So this side is pretty much the basic build height mechanics in Valheim. Now let's talk about some a little bit more advanced stuff, but still pretty simple. So first things first, what happens if we combine wood and iron? So you can see that we have a few new numbers here. Iron brought us to 50 meters tall on its own, but with wood combined, it gets a little bit taller. And this is actually going to be your max build height in Valheim. Right here at 56 meters, once again, core wood is a little bit taller than wood and dark wood. You know, this is going to be, if you really want to build tall, this is what you're going to want to do, is use iron and cover it up with wood. You can see that the iron details are mostly covered up. They stick through here and there just a little bit, but you can pretty much cover up iron poles with the other 3 sources of wood completely almost, and make it just seem like you're now building with wood to 50 something meters, whereas at the beginning of the game you could only build with wood to 20 something meters. All right, so now that we've talked about wood, we've talked about stone, then we talked about iron, so why not combine all 3 in one example. Now this is really cool and gave some very interesting results that I did not expect and that I've never heard anyone explain before. So let me explain. If we go back here to the back, I can show you something very important, which is that you can see here the iron poles placed on top of the stone are red. And what this means is that iron is not getting any advantage from touching stone itself. Iron wants to touch the ground. If you have iron touching the ground, iron is happy. If you have iron touching stone, it is not like the other woods which get reset. It will not reset. The good thing about this, and an important thing to know, is that iron will still work in this scenario. You can see that we have green wood here and blue wood here, showcasing that example I explained earlier, where if you're not at 16 meters max stone height, then you can get blue and green. That still applies here, and the iron poles still work, even though they are not grounded to the ground. But what's interesting here is to note that iron poles may not benefit from touching stone, but stone does benefit from touching iron. So let me explain. Stone's normal height, if you recall, is 16 meters, but with iron touching it brings its new height all the way to 28 meters tall. Now, I could go ahead and break this iron off right here, and I would only have to use iron to 28. And if you then place the wood on top of the stone, just like we did over here, you can get almost to the max build height in the game. But recall, I just said you can break the iron here. So the interesting thing about this method is combining stone, iron, and wood does not bring you to the tallest build height in the game, which you might think at first. Instead, it provides you with a way to use the fact that iron boosts up stone, and then you can chop off the iron halfway and use half the iron, but still get almost to the same build height. So essentially, this is going to save you quite a lot of iron. It's going to be your most iron efficient method for building up very tall structures. And if you're curious on the heights of each of those, dark wood adds 12 meters on top of the stone, making it to 40 meters. Wood adds 14 meters, totaling 42 meters. And core wood, once again, at the most 16 meters, totaling 44 meters. So we've kind of talked about how everything works, but I'd like to sum it up really quick before I show you how to build forever. So first things first, we started with wood, which brings you to roughly 20 meters height for building. You can then, soon after you enter a world, get a few pieces of iron, make a stone cutter, and start combining stone and wood, bringing you to an average of around 30 meters build height. Finally, once you have more iron to work with, you can bring yourself all the way up to 50 meters build height using iron. You can then go back to making it look like you use wood, combine the wood and the iron, and you can get even a little bit taller than 50 meters build height. Now let's say you want to get similar to this height, but you want to save some iron, then you want to go ahead and go back to the stone and wood method, combine iron poles with stone, boosting up that stone height, and then place your wood on top, and you now have a very inexpensive iron method for a very tall building. So the final thing I need to explain is this right here. How do you build forever? Well, you can go ahead and Google Devcommands or console commands in Valheim. Just Google how to enable them. It's very easy. And once you do, you need to just type in this code right here, spawn space rock underscore destructible underscore test. And this right here, as you can see, as I highlight this iron pole, is going to act as the ground. Just like stone acts as the ground for wood, this rock here is going to act as the ground wherever you spawn it in. So when you think about how that would apply to build height, it's just going to give you infinite build height. Right here, we're at max iron poles. Right here next to it, it doesn't look like it at all because I spawned this rock touching it. Now, as far as how high you can go, I stopped at around 300 meters, but I'm sure you can just keep on going if you want. And right here, you can see I took the cluster of rocks, which is kind of ugly, that big like kind of boulder, and I broke it down to just one final rock, and that still seems to work. You can see these are blue, so you can break it down and make it very minimal. I just learned this yesterday. action.
That is that. I hope this video helped you guys. If it did, maybe leave a like, maybe subscribe. I've also got a Twitter, a Reddit, an Instagram, and a TikTok. You can check me out on those if you would like. Thank you very much for watching. More coming soon. And as always, have a good one.